Hello and welcome. It's another edition of Total Woman on AD4 TV Radio, and my name is Mute Olori. Today, our focus will be on putting an end to violence against physically challenged persons in our society, joining the rest of the world to lend our voices to discrimination and ending violence against women, especially those living with disabilities. So people living with disabilities or physically challenged persons have historically been forced with unwarranted apathy and sometimes violence coming from able-bodied members of the society. Research has also shown that people with disability face twice as much violence than people without disability, and the perpetrators are often people close to them, like family members, friends, caregivers, acquaintances. Just the same way violence against women and children come from intimate partners, family members, schoolmates, teachers, co-workers. This set of people suffer unspeakable degradation stemming from sexual abuse, verbal assaults, to emotional abuse, and in some dire circumstances, they are outrightly neglected and rejected. So the global 16 days annual campaign against gender-based violence, launched 30 years ago by the Center for Women's Global Leadership, has become a veritable platform to raise awareness about the growing plight of people living with disabilities and violence against women as well as children and girls. This campaign, which runs every year from November 25th to December 10th, also emphasizes the need to put an end to these menace. So today on the program, we will dwell on the increased global calls for an end to violence against women, especially those with disabilities, and girls. So with me on the show today is a lawyer, a gender and disability rights activist with over 10 years of voluntary work in this industry. I'm talking about Apolmida Haruna. I got it.
Apolmida, yes.
Yes,
you did. You tried.
I got that.
At least for the first time.
Thank you very much, Apolmida. Thank you for joining us on the show today. The cry for justice, a cry against inequality, especially with people living with disability. So let's start with it. How did you find yourself in this space, advocating for people with disability?
Okay, so first of all, before I go forward, I'd like to just educate you a little, I hope you don't mind, on the right terminologies to use for persons with disabilities. When you say physical disability, it's just one part of disability. So we don't use the word physical challenge and persons with disabilities interchangeably, because physical disability, like I said, is just one. So the right word to use is actually persons with disabilities, not people living with disabilities. Actually, it's persons with disabilities, because we prefer person first. Okay. Yeah. So
to make it individualistic, because we're all different. Yeah. So when you use people, you cluster everybody together, whereby physical is actually different. And someone once said the disabilities you don't see, than abilities that you see. Thank you for that.
Yes. And also because we want to see the person first before the disability. So that's another reason why we use those terminologies.
Thank you.
So going to your question, well, I became a person with disability when I was 2 years old as a result of a domestic accident. And because of that, I lived all my life as a person with disability. Growing up, I realized that as a child with disability, my parents did not treat me any different. I got the same education as my peers. I did the same housework as my younger brothers and sisters, so I wasn't treated any different. But I found out that other children with disabilities, other persons with disabilities were actually being treated differently. I found out that some of the children, their parents used to lock them out, lock them up in the house. They don't allow them mingle with other people, and they treat them like less of a human than other people. So I decided that it is in my own, since I had parents that supported me, I had friends that supported me to be who I am today, I felt I should also do the same thing for other people. And I felt I should also lend my voice for the upliftment of persons with disabilities in our society.
So was that why you went to study law, so that you'll be able to penalize, persecute?
Yes, something like that. Something like that, yeah.
All right, so what has your experience been so far?
Well, it's been fantastic. It's been amazing. I've been able to lend my own quota to the realization of the rights of persons with disabilities, especially in Nigeria. It has propelled me to greater heights, like like acquiring my disability at 2 years and living with it throughout my years on earth has actually opened my eyes. I felt like probably if I wasn't a person with disability, I wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved today, and probably I wouldn't have understood the plight of persons with disabilities. So it has been a very wonderful experience, even though it wasn't like wonderful all through, of course, up and down and everything.
So let's look at this plight, because you're not the only one. A lot of them do not even have a voice or opportunity to speak up. Many we hear are being shut down, tired of, locked away.
Yeah.
Now, what are really the plights that, especially for women and girls, what are these things they face from every strata of society?
Well, there are lots of discrimination, stigma. I remember when, I always like to use my story sometimes to explain things. I remember when I was growing up, when I was in secondary school, I had this group of girls that didn't even want to associate with me because I had a disability. Like, I remember one time in class, we were feeling what they call slum book, I think, then. And it was my turn. Everyone in class was feeling, but when it got to my turn, they snatched the book from me and were like, oh, well, we don't associate with people like you. So this is the same thing that other women with disabilities actually face. We find them being tagged as, let me not use the word barren, but they feel like, oh, as a woman with disability, when you get married, you cannot bear children, or you can't do certain things, or certain chores in the house. But look at me, for example, as a woman with disability, I've been able to do a lot. I stay on my own. I don't stay with anybody. I had parents who taught me independent living. I attended a boarding school like every other person. I did everything. And this is to show you that if I can do it, a lot of other people can do it. They are being locked up in the house. I remember there was a time I visited a special school here in Abuja. I can't remember. I remember the school, but I don't want to mention it. And someone actually told me, one of the teachers, I think also, was telling me that some parents just prefer to come and dump their children in the school, and during holidays, they just leave the children there. They don't even come to take them home. They don't allow them to mingle with others. They prefer to just keep them there. So these are some of the challenges that they face. As women, when it comes to sex education, when they grow up and start, developing and everything, the parents, as usual, because usually before the society, it's your family. Yeah. They don't even, when they are teaching the other girls, I don't want to call them, the non-disabled girls, when they are teaching them sex education, things about their sexual and reproductive health and rights, they don't even talk to women or these girls with disabilities. They feel like, oh, nobody will even find you attractive. What do you need all these things for? So these are issues that keep on arising. And even when it comes to issues of violence, it is more on the women and girls with disabilities. Because for men with disabilities, there's still violence, but even in the mainstream society, you find that women suffer more violence than men. So it's the same thing even with women with disabilities. So they are suffering violence based on their gender and based on their disabilities. So it's like a triple discrimination, because first as a woman, as a person with disability, and then being poor again, because we find out statistically persons with disabilities are among the poorest of the poor in the society. So these are things that we face.
Now what does the law say? Are there laws, as a lawyer now, to educate us, that protect persons with disability? And if they are, how often are these laws implemented or activated for action?
Yeah, there are actually laws, and I feel like every law that is available in the society is also applies to persons with disabilities. The only thing is to find out how to make these laws inclusive. And I'm happy that Nigeria has actually, they have actually signed the disability bill into a law. So now we have the National Disability Act. And these are laws that we can actually use for protecting the rights of women and girls with disabilities and persons with disabilities in general. We also have laws like the UNCRPD, that's the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We have the VAP Act, which is Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. We have a lot of laws actually that protect the rights of persons with disabilities or women and girls with disabilities against violence. But the only thing is that what we realize in the course of our work is that many of these people do not know these laws. So how do you even fight for your right when you don't even know about the existence of these laws? So it's very important that we educate people on these laws, what's the provisions of these laws, and like the National Disability Act has a time, the transition period of 5 years. So it's okay, I understand if at the moment we don't have these services being inclusive, but after 5 years, the law was signed in 2019. So counting from 2019 to the next 5 years, after that, you can actually take anybody to court if your rights are being, because this law is all encompassing. It has all these things taken care of. And as signatory to all these international instruments too, you have the right to also fight for your right to seek for redress in court and wherever.
So even when there are cases like this, they empathize with them instead of, more, and so let me quickly ask, have we seen, if you can give us cases where people have been persecuted because of such abuse or violence against persons with disabilities?
Yeah, in court, I don't know. Probably there is, but I don't know, like in court. But I know there are some people that have done advocacy through advocacy and through other means. But in court, I don't know. There might be. So let me not absolutely rule it out.
If we cannot absolutely put our hands, then it's rare and it's difficult and it's very sad.
It's actually quite minimal, because the truth is, like I told you, people don't even know about these laws. They don't even know that they can actually go out and do. So most of the times, especially when it comes to issues of violence, the truth is, it's very hard to take these issues to court, especially when it has to do with women and girls with disabilities. For example, I remember there was a case in Bauchi State where someone called me and reported that a girl with disability was raped by their neighbor. And the thing is, this is something that should be taken to court. This is something that should be reported to the police. But the girl's family, this is the family I'm talking about, so people that are supposed to protect her were actually the ones that were saying that, oh, after all, you should even be lucky that someone found you attractive. Do you get? So these are issues that we actually deal with, because you even go to the police station to report cases. For example, I talk about rape more because these are the things we see in our own line of work. In our own line of work, you see somebody, a deaf woman or a deaf girl, going to the police station to go and report. They don't even know sign language. How do you even communicate with them? And sometimes when you even tell them, when you report these issues, when you report these cases, instead of them to take action, they laugh at you. They look at you and like, oh, you too. They even find you attractive to do that. So these are issues like
discrimination.
Yeah, there's a lot of discrimination. These are things that stop this from happening.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at how do we sensitize these people to even know that they have a right.
Sure.
It's the Total Woman on 84 TV Radio, and I've been speaking with my guests, looking at persons with disability. How do we bring an end to such violence, especially in this period as the world is focusing on the 16 days Orange Your World activism against violence on women. All right, so take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
On 9th November 2020, Intentional by Adams evolved from a desire for fashion and passion for trends. The past 12 months have recorded lots of highs than lows, and that is what passion can do. Besides passion, our clients across the globe are a real driving force. Each and every one of you has made the past 1 year the most memorable. The time and resources you have invested in us have been the booster tonic that drives us to serve you better every day. Intentional by Adams is a brand created for women of all colors, shapes, and sizes to intentionally up their personalities, careers, and confidence in style. We thank you all for consistently believing and sticking to our brand in the past 1 year. Intentional by Adams, live your style.
I am a total woman.
Welcome back. It's still Total Woman on 84 TV Radio, and we are looking at putting an end to violence against person with disability. All right, so but one thing I observed from our conversation, and that keeps coming up, is the fact that the laws are there, but the people don't know that they have these rights. First of all, let's look at some of the rights they have. And how do we begin to sensitize these people to know these are the rights that you have?
Okay, so for example, like from the conversations we've been having, as a person with disability, especially as a deaf person, for example, you have the right to an interpreter when you go to any government organization, be it the hospital, be it offices, be it any government function. I'm not diving into the private because it's kind of dicey, but for government, for public, any public space, you have that right. But many people do not know it. And sometimes you have the right, just as every other person, every right to dignity of human person, you have the right to education, you have the right to access every services, every government services as every other person. You have the right to be protected against abuse, but a lot of people do not know how to go about it. And going to the second part of your question, it is important, that is why we do the work we do, to create awareness in not just the society, but to also educate persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, as to where to go to, where to seek redress, and what rights they have. And in the government, that's why we have the National Orientation Agency. It is actually their work to sensitize the public, to give information to the public about things that are available to them. But a lot of times they are not inclusive, and they are not accessible. Their informations are not accessible to persons with disabilities. And that is why we're calling on the government, calling on the National Orientation Agencies, that in as much as they are putting out information out there, they are talking about issues that concern every citizen of Nigeria. Persons with disabilities are also citizens of Nigeria.
That's right.
And whatever information that they are putting out there should be in an accessible format. There should be sign language, there should either be Braille interpretation of every information they are putting out there, so that persons with disabilities will also be able to access it. And going beyond the government, that is why we are here at organizations of persons with disabilities, to also go out there, reach out to our own people, talk to them, educate them on these rights, educate them on the provisions that are there for them, and to also go out there and provide the services that they need.
Okay, so let's look at one watching you now and say, okay, I know someone, or I am a victim.
Okay.
Where should I go to? How do I access the provisions that are in place already by government?
Well, if you're a victim of any type of abuse or infringement of your rights. For abuse, you have the right to go to walk into any police station and report.
You just talked about,
I know, I'm going from the government down to the private, and other organizations. You have the right to go there. That's your first point of contact. For example, if you're being assaulted in your house, before you reach out to anybody, any organization, the first point of contact should be the police station, because you have to save your life first. You have to protect yourself first before you reach out to anybody. And we have a lot of other organizations in Nigeria that are actually working to combat violence against persons. We have organizations of persons with disabilities that are there to also provide, they provide guidance on how to get redress. We have organizations like Advocacy for Women with Disabilities Initiative. We have organizations like IFA, Inclusive Friends. We have Cedar Seed Foundation. We have an organization, Dorothy Njemaze Foundation. They work to protect victims of abuse against any other form of abuse, be it man, woman, persons with disabilities. And they are very, very disability friendly, even though they are not persons with disabilities, but they also work to protect persons with disabilities against violence. We have organizations, even my own organization, Halio Foundation, even though we're not like solely into protection of victims of abuse, but we have partnership with other organizations that are in that field that will actually provide guidance and help to you wherever or whenever you need it.
Okay, so but where do victims actually go? Are people who have been abused, traumatized, is there a provision for where they can go to? Is there a form of, temporary, place where, because we've seen cases where these women come to report, you still go back home. These people with disability come to report and then they are sent out on the streets. So what is available to provide some form of so-called shelter for such people?
I think we have the social services or social protection services in Nigeria, but the truth is that it's not as accessible as it should be. So even though they provide these services, even for mainstream society, it's difficult, and they are how will I even say, they are underfunded. So to provide the necessary services is difficult. And for persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, it gets worse because the environment itself is not like it's that accessible. The services are not that accessible. But we also have organizations. We have very few civil society organizations that are trying their bits. I know for sure we have Dorothy Njemaze Foundation. They have a shelter where they take in victims of abuse while they seek for redress in either in court, at the police station, or whatever. So we have that, I'm sure of that. But there are very few safe houses. I know there are 1 or 2 that I heard were opened recently in Abuja.
Is there really going to be an end to this violence against persons with disability?
Well,
do you see an end? Because a lot of people have been advocating for this. But the more we talk, the more we see an increase, a new dimension of abuse coming up. Apart from the physical one, we have the mental one, we have the emotional abuse and all that, especially against persons with disability. Women generally, and your child. Do you see an end? Do you see a reduction? Do you see a salvation on the way soon?
Well, when you say an end, I don't think there will ever be an end if it is an end. But when you say reduction, yes. And I know that for sure, for certain, there are a lot of organizations that are actually doing a lot of advocacy. There are a lot of programs. There are a lot of activities going on. There are a lot of policies coming out trying to protect persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, the society in general against this menace of violence. I know organizations like Disability Rights Advocacy Center, they are coming up with toolkits, policies, and a lot of policies to guide the government and also to help protect persons with disabilities against abuse, especially women and girls with disabilities. I know recently they launched a toolkit for sexual and gender-based violence in Abuja. That was like last week or last 2 weeks or something like that. So there are organizations that are actually working towards the reduction.
Most of the places we've talked are cities, but this thing is rampant more in the grassroots, in the villages, in the hard to reach area. How do we get these words across to them? First of all, sensitizing them that you have these rights. How do we do that?
And that's why I always go back to, because no matter what you say, you need the government, you need people like National Orientation Agency. That is why civil society organizations should partner, disabled persons with organizations should actually partner with this National Orientation Agency, develop advocacy materials, develop sensitization toolkits, sensitization materials to reach the grassroots. Because this National Orientation Agency I'm always talking about, they have very, very deep reach. They are in every local government, every ward of the states in Nigeria. So they are the best bet we have, because no matter how hard you try, you are just an organization. You cannot go all around Nigeria. But when you partner with this organization, and if the government is willing, then we are able to reach these people. But in our own capacity as civil society organization, as organizations of persons with disabilities, we can only try our best. We can try to organize sensitization workshops, sensitization visits, create advocacy materials, create awareness, and try to go to these grassroots to reach them. Putting out the laws, because I know some organizations are trying to like simplify the acts, put them in different languages, disseminate them at the local level for every other person to be able to understand at your own level. So there are organizations that are actually taking up this. The National Disability Act and one other, there are like 3 laws. They actually produce a simplified version of the laws for the layman, the laywoman to understand. So these are,
like they say,
point
knowledge
actions.
is power. When you know your rights, to be able to claim your rights. Thank you very much, Apple Nida, for being my guest on the show today. She's a lawyer and a person with disability, and she's been able to share her experiences with us. You see, a person with disability has a right and is a human being too. So together, when you see something, say something, and let's be a brother's keeper. I'll see you again next week on this edition of the program, Total Woman, on 84 TV Radio. My name is Muti Olori. God bless you.